Echeveria. Echeveria is probably the most recognizable succulent in the world, and the one most people picture when they hear the word succulent. The tight geometric rosette of fleshy leaves arranged in perfect spiraling layers looks almost artificial, like something designed by an architect rather than grown by nature. It is named after Atanasio Echeveria, an 18th-century Mexican botanical artist who illustrated plants for scientific expeditions across New Spain. There are over 150 known species, all native to the semi-arid regions of Mexico and Central America, where they grow on rocky slopes and cliffsides with very little soil and almost no consistent rainfall. The leaves store water in their fleshy tissue, and the waxy coating on the surface, called epicuticular wax or farina, reflects intense sunlight and reduces moisture loss. This coating gives many Echeverias their distinctive powdery blue-gray appearance, and is so delicate that touching the leaf leaves a permanent fingerprint mark that never disappears. When stressed by drought, temperature changes, or bright light, Echeverias produce some of the most vivid colors in the plant world, transitioning from green to deep purple, pink, orange, and red, as the plant produces protective pigments called anthocyanins in response to environmental stress. Haworthia. Haworthia is the succulent that thrives where all other succulents fail. Most succulents demand full sun. Haworthia was designed for shade. In its native habitat across South Africa, it grows tucked under rocks and larger plants, receiving only filtered or indirect light for most of the day. This makes it the only widely available succulent that performs well on indoor windowsills without direct sun, which is why it became one of the most popular houseplants globally in the 2010s houseplant boom. The most distinctive species, Haworthia cooperi, has leaves with transparent tips called windows. In the wild, the plant grows almost entirely underground with only these transparent leaf tips visible at the surface. Sunlight passes through the windows and travels down into the buried leaf tissue where photosynthesis happens underground. It is one of the most extraordinary light harvesting adaptations in the entire plant kingdom. The plant was named after Adrian Hardy Haworth, a British botanist who specialized in succulent plants in the early 1800s and described dozens of new species from specimens brought back from South African expeditions. Aloe vera. Aloe vera has been used by humans for at least 6,000 years, making it one of the oldest documented medicinal plants on Earth. Ancient Egyptian records from 1550 BCE describe it as the plant of immortality, and it appeared in the personal beauty routines of both Cleopatra and Nefertiti, according to historical accounts. Alexander the Great reportedly conquered the island of Socotra, specifically to secure its aloe supplies for treating wounded soldiers. The clear gel inside the leaves contains over 75 active compounds including vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and amino acids. The specific compound ascemenin has been studied for its wound healing and anti-inflammatory properties. Aloe vera does not actually exist in the wild in a truly natural state. Every population found growing outside cultivation can be traced back to human planting over thousands of years. Its true geographic origin remains scientifically uncertain, with researchers proposing the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa, and the Canary Islands as possible native regions. The global aloe vera industry is worth over $13 billion annually, with the gel used in everything from burn treatment to cosmetics to food and beverages. Lithops. Lithops are the most convincing camouflage artists in the plant kingdom. Native to the arid regions of southern Africa, these plants evolved to look exactly like the stones and pebbles surrounding them. The name comes from the Greek words lithos, meaning stone, and ops, meaning face. From above, a lithops looks like a small rounded pebble split down the middle. This disguise is so effective that even experienced botanists have knelt on lithops while examining the ground around them without realizing the stones were alive. The entire plant consists of just 2 fleshy leaves fused together at the base, with a small gap at the top through which a single flower emerges once per year. The flower is disproportionately large relative to the plant, sometimes wider than the entire leaf body, and appears in white or yellow depending on the species. After flowering, the old pair of leaves slowly dries and shrivels as a completely new pair grows from between them, the new leaves drawing all their moisture and nutrients from the disintegrating old ones. During this period, which can last several months, the plant should receive absolutely no water. Watering during leaf replacement is the most common cause of Lithops death in cultivation. Crassula ovata, jade plant. The jade plant has been a symbol of good luck and prosperity in Chinese culture for centuries, and is one of the most commonly given gifts at business openings and housewarmings across East Asia. In Feng Shui, the rounded coin-shaped leaves are believed to attract wealth, and the plant is traditionally placed near the entrance of homes and businesses to invite financial fortune. Native to South Africa and Mozambique, jade plants in the wild grow into woody shrubs reaching 2 meters tall and living for decades. In cultivation, the same plant kept in a container stays compact and manageable for an entire human lifetime. One of the most extraordinary characteristics of the jade plant is its longevity. There are documented cases of jade plants passed down through multiple generations of the same family, with some specimens confirmed to be over 70 years old and still actively growing and flowering. The small pink or white star-shaped flowers only appear when the plant experiences a period of cool temperatures and reduced watering, mimicking the dry season conditions of its native South African habitat. Sempervivum, hens and chicks. The name sempervivum comes from the Latin words semper meaning always and vivum meaning living, and the plant earns that name completely. Sempervivums have survived being frozen solid, dried to a crisp, buried under snow for months, and exposed to temperatures ranging from -30 degrees Celsius to over 40 degrees Celsius, and returned to active growth when conditions improved. They originated in the mountain ranges of Europe, including the Alps, Carpathians, and Pyrenees, growing in rocky crevices and exposed ridgelines where almost nothing else can survive. Roman soldiers carried sempervivums on their campaigns and planted them on the roofs of buildings occupied by their legions, believing the plants protected against lightning strikes. Charlemagne issued an imperial decree ordering sempervivums to be planted on every rooftop in his empire for protection. The mother rosette, called the hen, continuously produces smaller rosettes called chicks around its outer edge throughout its life. After several years, the hen flowers once, producing a tall, dramatic flower spike, and then dies. But by that point, she has produced enough chicks to fill an entire container many times over, making the colony effectively immortal even as individual plants complete their life cycle. Agave. Agave is the plant that tequila comes from, and one of the most economically significant succulents in human history. The blue agave, Agave tequilana, is grown across approximately 80,000 hectares in the Jalisco region of Mexico, specifically for tequila production. The plant grows for 8 to 12 years before flowering, at which point the entire plant's stored energy, accumulated over a decade, is directed into producing a single massive flower spike that can reach 8 meters tall. After flowering, the plant dies. The heart of the agave, called the piña because it resembles a giant pineapple, is harvested just before this flowering event to capture the plant's maximum sugar content. A single piña can weigh between 40 and 90 kilograms. Before the Spanish introduced distillation to Mexico in the 16th century, indigenous peoples fermented agave sap into a mildly alcoholic drink called pulque, which had been consumed for at least 2,000 years. The fibers of the agave leaf, called sisal, were used to make rope, fabric, and paper long before European contact. The Aztecs used agave for everything from food and medicine to clothing, writing material, and building construction, calling it the Tree of Wonders. Sedum. Sedum is the succulent that grows on green roofs across European and American cities, covering millions of square meters of urban rooftop space and reducing building energy consumption by insulating against both heat and cold. The use of sedum on rooftops dates back to Scandinavian turf roof traditions going back thousands of years, But the modern green roof movement specifically selected sedum because it handles the extreme conditions of an exposed rooftop: intense sun, wind, drought, and temperature swings, better than almost any other plant. There are over 400 species of sedum distributed across the northern hemisphere, ranging from tiny ground-hugging alpine species to upright garden varieties reaching 60 centimeters tall. The upright varieties like Sedum spectabile produce large flat-topped flower clusters in late summer that are among the most important late-season nectar sources for butterflies and bees in temperate gardens. Sedum stores water in every cell of its leaves using a specialized photosynthesis pathway called crassulation acid metabolism, or CAM, which keeps the leaf pores closed during the heat of the day to prevent moisture loss, and only opens them at night to absorb carbon dioxide, the opposite of how most plants breathe. Kalanchoe. Kalanchoe is the second best-selling potted plant in the world after the orchid, and most people who buy one have no idea they are purchasing a succulent. The bright clusters of small flowers in red, orange, yellow, pink, and white look nothing like the typical image of a cactus-adjacent plant, and the plants are sold in supermarkets, garden centers, and florists worldwide as flowering houseplants rather than as succulents. Native to Madagascar and tropical Africa, kalanchoes are photoperiodic plants, meaning they require a specific ratio of darkness to light to trigger flowering. Commercial growers manipulate this by covering the plants with black cloth for several weeks to simulate the shorter days of autumn, tricking the plant into bloom mode regardless of the actual season. This is why kalanchoes appear in flower at any time of year in stores. One species, Kalanchoe degrammontiana, commonly called Mother of Thousands, produces hundreds of tiny plantlets along the edges of each leaf. These miniature plants, complete with their own root systems, fall from the parent plant and root wherever they land, making it one of the most prolific self-propagating plants known to science. Gasteria. Gasteria is one of the least known succulents in mainstream gardening culture, despite being one of the most beginner-friendly plants available. Like Haworthia, it tolerates low light conditions that would stress most succulents, and it handles inconsistent watering with remarkable patience. The name comes from the Latin word for stomach, because the tubular flowers swell at the base in a stomach-like shape. Native to South Africa, most Gasteria species grow in shade under larger shrubs and between rocks in the Eastern Cape Province. The leaves are typically thick, hard, and tongue-shaped, arranged in a distinctive two-ranked pattern called distichus, where leaves emerge alternately from opposite sides of the stem, rather than in a spiral rosette like most succulents. This two-ranked arrangement gradually rotates into a rosette form as the plant matures, a characteristic unique to Gasteria among commonly cultivated succulents. Gasterias hybridize readily with aloes and Haworthias in cultivation, producing plants called gasteraloes and gasterhaworthias that combine characteristics of both parents. These natural hybrids occur occasionally in the wild where the ranges of the parent species overlap. Euphorbia. Euphorbia is one of the largest plant genera on Earth, with over 2,000 species ranging from tiny alpine cushion plants to massive cactus-like African trees reaching 10 meters tall. The most famous species, Euphorbia pulcherrima, is the poinsettia, which decorates millions of homes every Christmas. The succulent euphorbias native to Africa evolved to look almost identical to American cacti through a process called convergent evolution, where completely unrelated plants independently develop the same adaptations: spines, ribbed stems, water storage tissue, in response to similar desert conditions on different continents. The most reliable way to distinguish a euphorbia from a cactus is the sap. Euphorbias produce a thick white latex sap that is toxic and causes severe skin and eye irritation. Cacti never produce this white latex. The genus is named after Euphorbus, the physician to King Juba II of Mauritania in the 1st century BCE, who reportedly used the plant medicinally. Despite the toxicity of the sap, several Euphorbia species have been used in traditional medicine across Africa and Asia for centuries, with modern researchers investigating compounds in the latex for potential anti-cancer properties. Cactus, saguaro. The saguaro is the largest cactus in the United States and one of the most iconic plants in North America, found exclusively in the Sonoran Desert of Arizona, California, and northwestern Mexico. A saguaro does not grow its first arm until it is between 50 and 75 years old. A plant with 5 arms is likely over 200 years old. The tallest recorded saguaro reached 14 meters. The entire trunk and arms are covered in a network of tough woody ribs that expand like an accordion during the rainy season, allowing the plant to absorb and store up to 750 liters of water in a single rainfall event. That stored water sustains the plant through months of drought. The saguaro is a keystone species of the Sonoran Desert ecosystem. Its flowers, which bloom only at night and are pollinated by bats, produce fruit that has been harvested by the Tohono O'odham people for thousands of years. The harvesting of saguaro fruit, done with long poles made from the dried ribs of dead saguaros, marks the beginning of the traditional Tohono O'odham New Year. After the saguaro dies, the dried woody skeleton of ribs and a watertight boot-shaped lining that formed around holes made by nesting birds continues to provide shelter for desert animals for decades. Haworthiopsis attenuata, zebra plant. The zebra plant is named for the white horizontal bands of raised tubercles that stripe its dark green leaves, creating a pattern that genuinely resembles zebra markings. It is one of the most sold succulents globally, and one of the most frequently confused with its close relative Haworthia fasciata, which has smoother leaf surfaces with only the outer surface banded, while the zebra plant, Haworthiopsis attenuata, has bumps on both upper and lower leaf surfaces. The genus Haworthiopsis was separated from Haworthia in 2013, following genetic analysis that revealed the group was more distantly related to other Haworthias than previously understood. Like most members of the Haworthia family, it grows naturally in the eastern Cape of South Africa, sheltering under shrubs in rocky grassland and scrub. It produces offsets prolifically, forming dense clusters of rosettes over time. A single plant purchased in a small pot will fill a wide, shallow container within a few years as offset after offset pushes out from the base of the mother plant. The flowers are small, tubular, and white with green stripping, produced on long, thin stems that can reach 40 centimeters, an extraordinary height relative to the compact leaf rosette below. Adenium, desert rose. The desert rose is not a rose at all. It is a succulent native to the Sahel region of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula that produces flowers of such extraordinary color and elegance that it has been cultivated as an ornamental plant across tropical Asia for centuries. In Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, elaborate desert rose cultivation is a serious hobby with rare specimens selling for thousands of dollars. The swollen trunk base, called a caudex, stores water and gives mature specimens a dramatic sculptural appearance that makes them resemble ancient bonsai trees. Thai collectors have developed hundreds of named varieties with flowers ranging from pure white to deep crimson, bicolors, stripes, and patterns that have no equivalent in the wild species. The plant contains cardiac glycosides in all its parts, compounds toxic enough that African hunters historically used the sap on arrow tips. Despite this toxicity, the plant is handled freely by millions of gardeners worldwide with basic precautions. In East African traditional medicine, adenium sap has been used to treat a range of conditions, with modern pharmacological research investigating its compounds for potential applications in treating parasitic infections. Opuntia, prickly pear. The prickly pear cactus is one of the most economically important plants in Mexico and the image at the center of the Mexican national flag, where an eagle stands on a prickly pear cactus. The Aztec legend of Tenochtitlan describes their god Huitzilopochtli directing them to found their city where they found an eagle eating a snake while perched on a prickly pear. That site became modern Mexico City. The fruit of the prickly pear, called tuna in Spanish, has been eaten across the Americas for at least 9,000 years. The pads, called nopals, are a staple vegetable in Mexican cuisine, eaten raw in salads, grilled, scrambled with eggs, and used in dozens of traditional dishes. The spines of Opuntia are of two distinct types: the large visible spines and microscopic hair-like spines called glochids that are far more dangerous than the visible ones because they detach on contact and are nearly impossible to see or remove from skin. The prickly pear was accidentally introduced to Australia in the 1800s as a hedging plant and spread to cover 24 million hectares of agricultural land within decades, one of the most destructive plant invasions in history, before being controlled by introducing a moth whose caterpillars feed exclusively on Opuntia. Ionium. Ionium is a succulent from the Canary Islands, Madeira, and the Mediterranean coast that does something almost no other succulent does. It grows actively through winter and goes dormant in summer. Most succulents thrive in heat and slow down in cold. Ionium evolved in the climate of the Canary Islands, where summers are dry and hot and winters are mild and wet, the opposite of the conditions most succulents prefer. During the dry summer heat, Ioniums curl their leaves inward, reduce their metabolism, and enter a semi-dormant state. When autumn rains arrive and temperatures drop, they wake up and begin their active growing season. The most dramatic species, Ionium arboreum atripurpureum, produces deep purple-black rosettes on branching woody stems that give mature specimens the appearance of small exotic trees. The color is deepest in full sun and fades toward green in shade as the plant reduces its anthocyanin production. After several years of growth, individual rosettes flower once in a large cone-shaped cluster of hundreds of tiny yellow flowers, and then die, while the rest of the plant continues growing from other branches. This monocarpic flowering of individual rosettes while the overall plant survives is a characteristic shared with several other succulent genera. Stapelia, carrion flower. Stapelia produces one of the most extraordinary flowers in the plant kingdom and one of the most unpleasant smells. The large star-shaped flowers, which can reach 30 centimeters across in some species, are covered in fine hairs and marked with intricate patterns of red, brown, yellow, and purple. They smell precisely like rotting meat. This is entirely intentional. Stapelia flowers are pollinated by carrion flies that are attracted to the smell and visual appearance of the flower, which mimics the texture and color of decomposing flesh. The flies land on the flower expecting to feed or lay eggs, instead picking up and depositing pollen before realizing the deception and leaving. Despite the smell, which is only detectable close to the flower, stapelias are popular collector plants because the flowers are genuinely extraordinary to look at. Native to South Africa and Tanzania, they grow in rocky scrub and grassland where they are virtually invisible when not in flower, the gray-green ridge stems blending completely with the surrounding rocks and dried plant material. In cultivation, they are grown almost exclusively for the novelty of the flower, with collectors sometimes placing the plant outside during flowering to avoid the smell indoors. Echeveria subsicilis, morning beauty. Morning beauty is one of hundreds of named Echeveria cultivars developed by commercial growers over the past several decades, and represents the extraordinary range of forms that selective cultivation has produced from the original wild Echeveria species. The rosette displays pink-tipped blue-gray leaves that deepen to rose-pink at the edges in bright light, a color gradation so precise and so consistent that it appears almost digitally rendered. Modern Echeveria cultivation has produced rosettes in forms that do not exist anywhere in the wild, including ruffled leaves, crested growth forms where the growing point fans out into a wave-like crest, and monstrose forms where the growth pattern breaks down into irregular masses of tissue. Korean succulent breeders in particular developed some of the most distinctive modern Echeveria forms in the 2010s, creating plants that became globally sought after with single specimens selling for hundreds of dollars. The export of rare Korean succulent cultivars became a significant commercial industry, with plants shipped worldwide to collectors. Some of these cultivars have proven unstable and revert to more standard growth forms over time, while others breed true and have become established in collections permanently. Ceropegia woodii, string of hearts. String of hearts is a trailing succulent native to South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Eswatini that produces pairs of small heart-shaped leaves on long, thin purple trailing stems that can reach 2 to 4 meters in length. The leaves are dark green on top with silver marbling and purple on the underside, the coloring providing camouflage against the rocky ground of its native habitat. It grows from small tuber-like structures that store water and nutrients, and produces additional tubers called aerial tubers along the stems at the leaf nodes. These aerial tubers drop to the ground and root on contact, spreading the plant across rocky surfaces in its natural habitat. In cultivation, these same tubers can be removed and planted to produce new plants within weeks. The flowers are small, tubular, and remarkably complex in structure for such a delicate plant. The tube is lined with fine hairs that trap small insects entering to feed on nectar, holding them long enough to deposit or collect pollen before releasing them. This temporary trapping mechanism, called kettle trap pollination, is shared with several other Ceropegia species and is among the most sophisticated pollination strategies in the succulent family. Agave Victoria regini, Queen Victoria agave. Queen Victoria agave is considered by many succulent collectors to be the most beautiful agave species in existence. The dense symmetrical rosette of dark green triangular leaves edged with crisp white margins forms a geometric pattern so precise it looks engineered. It grows extremely slowly, taking 20 to 30 years to reach flowering size. When it finally flowers, the single flower spike rises 3 to 4 meters above the rosette in a remarkable display that represents the culmination of decades of growth. Like all agaves, it dies after flowering. Named after Queen Victoria by the botanist Thomas Moore in 1875, it is native to the Chihuahuan Desert of northeastern Mexico, where it grows on steep rocky limestone cliffs at elevations between 1,000 and 2,700 meters. The wild population is listed as endangered due to habitat loss and collection pressure. Despite this, it is one of the most widely cultivated ornamental agaves in the world and has been grown in botanical gardens and private collections since the 1870s. The white markings on the leaf edges are caused by imprinting from adjacent leaves during development inside the bud, each leaf leaving a precise impression of its terminal spine on the leaf pressed against it, creating the characteristic pattern as the leaves unfurl. Schlumbergera, Christmas cactus. The Christmas cactus is not a desert cactus at all. It is a forest cactus native to the coastal mountains of southeastern Brazil, where it grows as an epiphyte, meaning it lives on tree branches and rock faces in the canopy of humid Atlantic forest, drawing moisture from rain and fog rather than from soil. This origin explains why its care requirements are completely different from desert succulents. It needs higher humidity, indirect light, and more regular watering than the average cactus. The familiar flattened stem segments are actually modified stems called phylloclades that perform photosynthesis in the absence of true leaves. The flowers, which appear in red, pink, white, orange, and purple, are pollinated in the wild by hummingbirds. Flowering is triggered by shorter days and cooler temperatures, which is why the plant naturally flowers around Christmas in the northern hemisphere when day length decreases. Commercial growers manipulate day length to produce plants in flower year-round. 3 different species are commonly sold as Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus, and Easter cactus, each flowering at slightly different times of year corresponding roughly to their common names, though all 3 are frequently mislabeled in retail settings.